"You don't live here anymore." That's what she said before I even closed my truck door. Karen Whitmore, on my porch with a clipboard like a badge and bright orange trespassing signs stapled to the trees my dad and I planted. And I'm standing there with my mother's urn in my hands, thinking I came home to say goodbye, not to be told to step away from my own steps. The creak still sounded like a hush I could breathe inside, but the yard screamed safety inspection, property preservation, do not enter, and I swear, even the mailbox looked embarrassed. My name's Jake Carter. That cabin is my family's skin turned into wood, and in one breath, she made it sound like a crime scene I accidentally wandered into. "Sir, step away from the posted notices." She said flat as a parking ticket, two compliance guys in neon vests filming everything, and she slid a fat envelope across the rail like an apology. I had to pay for per Section 12. 3 abandonment over 24 months triggers. Fines and stabilization odd 100 today. 250 daily gate code. Temporarily deactivated for community safety. The kind of sentence that pretends to be helpful while it locks your door from the outside. "We don't have a Section 12.3, I told her, and she smiled that smile people wear when they know they wrote the rule last night. "We do now." Snap went the tape sticker on my porch beam. "Needs stabilization." The same beam my father sanded in 1979. And I kept my jaw where adults keep theirs because anger never makes a good lawyer. I called every attorney in a 50-mile radius voicemail receptionist retainers. I couldn't afford, and just when I was about to give up, a warm voice said, "Mr. Carter." "Ethan Cole, emergency HOA matters." "Or my lane. I can get this stayed, yeah. That happened. A Lifeline drove up in a gray sedan." He flipped through Karen's paperwork routine. Annoying, but fixable. "All I need is limited power of attorney to speak for you at the hearing, strictly procedural. And I hesitated the way you do when something smells like fresh paint, and you can't find the wet wall." He nodded. I signed where he pointed, and he clicked his pen like we just solved a puzzle. My neighbor Linda drifted over through the pines. Soft voice. "Sorry about your mom," then she dropped the kind of sentence that hangs in the air like smoke. "I saw that lawyer at the clubhouse last week with Karen late. Maybe prepping a case. Maybe the devil rents conference rooms, and now you know what I mean." That night, a notice got taped over an orange sign, like it was claiming territory. Past due total 2,250 special hearing in 48 hours. Lien service suspension tow. If my truck touched a blade of common grass, and my dad's key fob in the dish caught the porch light. Little hand-lettered tag. He wrote years ago. Bridge, emergency. A joke until it wasn't. The next morning, the crew came back with more tags and a posture that said they'd measured 100 porches and never met a memory. They couldn't price one of them. Knocked my mom's cedar heart off the shelf, the one she carved with Dad. Near the end, it hit the floor and split clean, unfortunate. Karen said, necessary during mitigation, and I pressed my fingers into the crack until cedar dust lined my palm, telling myself to breathe through the part where grief turns into gasoline. I needed proof that didn't care how loud she talked, so I did what my father taught me. I listened, and from the trees I filmed Ethan and Karen with a man in a Pinecrest development jacket. Survey flags already in my yard, like confetti after a party. I hadn't been invited to. Ethan tracing lines on a map, while the Pinecrest guy nodded. Like a waiter who knew the order by heart. 2 minutes of video that felt like an earthquake. That afternoon, the mail carrier Ruth, the one with the sun-cracked dashboard, and the bobblehead eagle handed me a misrouted envelope addressed to Ethan Pinecrest. Letterhead phrases that made my neck go hot. Acquisition timeline, coordination bonus upon transfer, HOA alignment flow. And she said you didn't see this, but somebody should then drove off. Like her tailgate was sworn to secrecy. Karen hosted a fire safety forum at the clubhouse that night. Slideshow of dry grass and charred houses. And then my cabin labeled nuisance risk. People nodding in rows because certainty is contagious. I raised my hand. Owner comments limited to agenda items. Security and 2 men in polo shirts moved toward me. Like furniture movers. I left before they could pick me up. Linda met me by the oak with a folder held like contraband ring. Camera timestamps of Karen meeting with Pinecrest 2 nights before the board vote, cookies in hand. Because people always bring cookies when they're lying. I drove to Bridgepoint, the wooden footbridge behind the property where my parents carved their initials. Years ago, slid my hand under the second plank, found the stubborn screw my dad always joked about, and popped a weathered tin free inside. Were Trailcam SD cards, a binder of the old bylaws from before Karen's time, and printed emails showing draft language for Section 12. 3. Written by Pinecrest Council. My dad's pencil notes in the margins saying, "This doesn't belong here," and watch the votes like he'd set a landmine of truth under the bridge and waited for me to need it. Dad's old laptop whirred like a coffee grinder while the files opened Ethan on my lawn. 3 months before his friendly call, leveling a tripod toward the creek. Karen with a Pinecrest rep pointing at flags, email footers, with Pinecrest logos beneath the abandonment clause and the original Section 12 in the binder, talking about fence heights. Not abandonment, the difference between a rule and a weapon. You can aim. I took copies to Deputy Grant Lewis. Steady eyes, sleeves that didn't lie when he folded them. "We'll be at the hearing. Bring your evidence, keep your cool," and that's all I needed. Someone with a badge telling me daylight still counts. Karen's last message got taped to my door, the morning of pay, $7,250. Or the board proceeds with foreclosure counsel, or, and this part. Read like a smile, execute a quitclaim deed to Pinecrest, and spare everyone the process. Mercy right before the knife. The clubhouse smelled like coffee creamer and new carpet. Every chair full. Karen at the dais with a gavel like a wand. Ethan in the front row, polishing his legal pad. 3 suits in the back, who didn't live here but looked at us like they did. They did, Linda. By the exit, Ruth, near the coats. Deputy Lewis on the wall, hands folded, watching the room learn who it had been listening to. Karen clicked through slides about safety and property values and documented abandonment, never looking at me, never needing to because this part was supposed to be a monologue. Then she gave me 3 minutes and I plugged in Dad's laptop. "Here's what your safety looks like when you forget to turn off a trail camera," and the screen showed Ethan setting a transit in my yard with a date stamp 3 months before his rescue act. Then Karen and Pinecrest at my fence line. Then a PDF where Pinecrest Council drafted. Section 12.3, then a page from the old binder where Section 12 was fences, not ghosts, and the room started doing quiet math. "How did Pinecrest draft our bylaws?" Linda asked. And Karen yanked the HDMI and said, "We are experiencing technical difficulties. This material isn't on the agenda." And a voice from the doorway said, "Mail fraud is on mine." Postal inspector calm as a ruler on a desk. "We'll need copies of those letters and invoices." Ethan stood like a balloon losing air. "I can explain." Took a single step, and Deputy Lewis filled the doorway with nothing but posture. "Stay," he said. And Ethan sat legal pad, slipping from his fingers like the end of a song. Karen's face finally showed the strain the rules had been holding up. "You don't appreciate what I've done," she hissed. "I kept this place perfect. Order standards no more. Junkers in driveways. No weeds under mailboxes. No decay." And she ripped the power strip from the wall, a tiny spark popping like punctuation. Then quiet, the kind of quiet that says everyone hears the same thing. "Perfection isn't free," she added, voice cracking like old tile. And the postal inspector murmured to the deputy, and he stepped forward and said, "Whitmore, you're being detained while we review allegations of mail fraud, conspiracy and abuse of process of the room inhaled as one." And when the cuffs clicked, it was the smallest sound, and somehow the loudest. Ethan didn't argue. He just looked smaller without his answers. If this was a simple story, it would fade to black there. But as they led her past me, Karen turned and said, "You don't know what you're protecting. Not even a threat. More like a riddle. People who love power leave behind when the lights come up." And I carried Mom's urn back to the truck, set it in the passenger seat where she used to hum. And I didn't feel like celebrating relief isn't the opposite of anger. It's just a different temperature. Back at the cabin, I glued the cedar heart together. Thin bead, drying clear. A line. You can still see if you know where to look. Set it on the shelf. Opened the windows, let the creek talk. And I thought about rules that keep us safe, and rules that keep us quiet, and how you don't know which kind you've got until somebody points a clipboard at your life and calls it maintenance. That's my story, told as plain as I can. So tell me yours. Where's the line between community standards and personal rights in your world? When does order become a weapon? Was Karen doing her job? Or did she cross it the minute she turned neighbors into suspects? You think I was right to drag it all into daylight? Or would you have taken the deal and slept? You know what I mean. Drop your take in the comments. Argue it hard. And if you've lived through an HOA mess or any rule that got used like a hammer, share it. Because someone out there is staring at a notice on their door right now and trying